Hey everyone, Willie Clark here. Welcome to episode 22 of the Voices of Valyria podcast. Me and my lovely host Tim will be discussing Home, the most recent episode of Game of Thrones. How's it going, Tim?
It's going rather well. I would like to say to the internet, when I said last week exactly, that I was right, I was absolutely right, 150% right. Uh, Superman was indeed Clark Kent.
And I think Spider-Man is his identity was revealed in this episode too, actually.
Was it Bruce Wayne? Because I'm pretty sure I have like $95 now
No,
that
Bruce Banner. I think
Bruce
that's
Banner.
yeah. I think that's
That makes
yeah.
sense.
That makes sense. But anyways, Game of Thrones, lovely Game of Thrones. This is a big week. There's a lot of things to talk about. As always, just a reminder because this is new to this season that spoilers for everything. Spoilers for the TV show. Spoilers for all the books. The good news is that the show has passed the books. But if you are a strict just show watcher and don't want to know how the show may be doing things differently, or there are a few surprises left that the show has passed that probably won't happen, but it's possible they could. So if you don't want to know those things, we're warning you right now.
Basically, if we know it and we think that we can theorize on it, we're going to bring it up.
Exactly. So, and this is different from how we did things in the past, but this year is crazy. We have the show has passed. Everything is now taking place past what has been written, and the the biggest. It's probably the biggest cliffhanger that book readers have had to deal with for millennia has finally risen from the dead.
That's a good way to put it. Jesus is back. I mean, John Cena. I mean, son of a bitch. What's his name? Jon Snow.
There you go. Jon Snow. Jon Snow is well and alive. I mean,
I think it was a really great way to do it, though. It was actually like they could have very easily done Melisandre rubbing her magical hands on his chest and just making him like arise then, and then all his faithful apostles around him like, oh, he's risen. But just having it so that we had that moment of doubt because we were like looking at the dead body, like, well, Kit Harington did say that John's truly dead. I guess he was, and then he breathes like, oh, motherfucker,
yeah.
Kit Harington, what were you doing?
I mean, it's definitely the worst kept. I feel like it's the worst kept secret ever. And actually, so really interesting. The interview and the article hasn't come out yet, but Entertainment Weekly, I think it was Entertainment Weekly, apparently has a huge cover story interview with him that they're slowly going to be revealing over the course of the week. That's talking about how he's managed to keep the secret. I mean, I say keep it secret in air quotes, in podcast air quotes, because you can't see.
I honestly think he did a very good job because even though we all kind of knew he was coming back, but the fact that he denied it so much, and that we always had that sense, like, that's the only reason why I think that scene worked, because he denied it to the point that, like, well, I have this bit of doubt now because he's not moving from the slab. But honestly, we all knew he was going to come back.
We all knew he was coming back, and I mean, he never cut his hair. Like, he'd been seen in public still with the Jon Snow hair, and we had seen pictures and stuff had leaked out of him being there filming, which they try to cover with the whole, oh, like, yeah, he was there filming, but he was filming his dead scenes, of course. But like, I don't know. I'm actually a little torn on this one, where I'm not like, I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen with John. We know he's back. We don't know how things are gonna go from here. But I almost kind of I'm kind of disappointed that the show used the same cliffhanger that the books did. Just because I don't think it was ever actually a believable cliffhanger. To me, it's never been a question of, is John dead or not? Like, oh, he was absolutely dead. The question has always been, how will John come back? And
I would have to agree with that because even though he was stabbed multiple times and betrayed. It was just like, yeah, but he's the most main character-y of all the characters.
Even to go back, into the depths of time. It was a cheap move for Martin to do to end the book on that cliffhanger note. And I'm beginning to think now, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm beginning to wonder, you know, if he did that because people were getting too close to R plus L equals J, um, and if so, then he was like, well, maybe if I do a cliffhanger and kill John, that'll people will think this isn't true. But I do think this has now we know why he desperately wanted to get this book out before this season, like,
Because of the reveal.
and it's not going to be the only reveal. But
No,
this,
this episode is filled with so much theory fodder.
and I mean, this season's coming out swinging. Like people are dropping like flies, like shit's happening all over the place. And
I'd like to make a point of that, like that fact, well, as you say it, because I was thinking about this the other day. Like, why has the beginning of this season felt like such a huge swing forward for the show? And it's because nothing happened the previous season, and it was all lead up for this season.
well, and so here's, I think some of that may have been on purpose. I sincerely think that we essentially know that Martin must have begged them to not do Bran until this season, because I think actually, yes, the having John be revealed first in the show, that's a thing, you know, but I think the bigger deal really is what we're going to learn from Bran's story. And we can talk about this for a little bit. But I do think that the bigger reveals that are going to have major ripples in the series as a whole are going to come from Bran's story. And I think that, more than anything, was the impetus for why Martin really, really wanted to get that book done before this season.
I mean, Bran is the only character right now that can see into the past.
Yep.
And those are going to have implications towards our future.
Yep, exactly. And I did now that you mentioned that, Tim, it's funny because all of a sudden this episode starts out with Bran looking into the past, and they never explain, like, oh, by the way, Bran can see through Bran has magic powers now. I mean, we knew he was a warg, we knew he had all this stuff, but they didn't even bother trying to explain how he could see into the future.
Oh yeah, they were just like, yeah, he does that now.
Yeah.
It's been an entire season, so.
Yeah. People who are missing for a season can see into the future. That's just how it works. But yeah, that's some big stuff. The Hodor stuff is interesting, and
Willis.
And I don't think there's actually any book backing for that, though I'm not positive.
No, they named him Willis in the books.
Not his name, but that he used to be able to talk.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I have no memory of that. I asked someone else too, and then I forgot to look before the podcast. But I don't. Yeah, I legitimately don't think that there's any kind of thing for that. I mean, it makes sense. But I'll tell you, lovely listeners, the same thing I told my Game of Thrones group after the episode yesterday, is that old Nan is one of the only characters in the series that knows what's up.
And old Nan and Howland Reed.
Yep. So anything that gets us closer to old Nan and Hodor is very interesting. But the biggest thing is with that scene with Bran is the preview that we got for next week's episode, showing the Tower of Joy.
Yeah, that's going to be a major. If you are a fan of the books, this is the moment that you've been waiting for to confirm something that in your heart you've known to be true.
Your entire life.
Your entire life, since the first book came out and onward, you're just like, this Jon Snow guy. He seems to be there seems to be more about him than meets the eye. And like, well, what about this thing about Ned Stark, having a bastard son? That doesn't seem very Ned Starkish.
Yeah.
And what about this Robert's Rebellion thing? It doesn't really make sense that Rhaegar would steal Lyanna Stark. We're about to have that revealed to
Yeah,
us.
yeah, and it looks like that could be coming next week, which is huge, and that that's the crux of what this entire story is about. Robert's Rebellion, everything that's happening now in current day Westeros politics, all traces down to essentially the Tower of Joy in Robert's Rebellion. Um, and so just to give a little, to give a little primer, the Tower of Joy is where Lyanna dies. Ned's sister, the rest of the Starks' aunt, and we know very little about it. But what we do know is that she makes some, or she doesn't make. She makes Ned make some promise to her.
And known, the only people who know this promise are Ned Stark, Ileana, and Howland Reed. The only 3 people, and only one person on that list is alive. And possibly through this, past vision super sense that Bran has, we will know too.
Yep. And I mean, obviously, the big theory going in is that Jon Snow is actually not the son.
Not a Snow and
Yeah,
not a Stark.
not a Snow, not a Star, not a Stark, not a
Well, he's part Stark,
yeah,
but
but a Targaryen, and that the Robert's Rebellion and all that Lyanna actually went willingly and was not kidnapped by Rhaegar and was pregnant with child, and that she made Ned promise to raise Jon like his own.
and to protect him, because if you recall back to the first seasons as well as the books, Ned was always a little bit apprehensive about Robert's bloodlust towards Targaryens, and it might be, part of it might be that Ned is just like, you're a little bit crazy. I mean, we're friends, but you're a little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's more like, you're talking about my nephew.
Yep. Yep. So, and that that's really the big reveal of probably the entire series. It's what almost everything's led to, and it looks like we'll be getting it next week, which is huge. Like that's a huge moment. Um,
Another huge moment that may or may not have been teased this episode is with a particular little scene with a particular man named Tyrion.
hmm.
Tyrion Lannister. This is something that both my coworkers and a couple of my friends have made note, is that Tyrion rolls a nat 20 with a conversation with dragons. And if you were anywhere on the Twitter during Game of Thrones, you are a brave soul. But everyone called him Dragon Whisper, and I'm just like, how is Tyrion so charismatic with dragons? We also get the first time in the show that Tyrion talks about his love of dragons
Yep.
and how much he's wanted a dragon.
Yep.
This is something that was discussed in the books early on, but this is the first time in the show we get it, and it's just like, all right, why does Tyrion Lannister? Why is he such a dragon fancier?
Yeah, and this is one of those things that has always kind of bothered me about the show, is that and because it is something that I felt like was going to be very important in the long run, is Tyrion has a boner for dragons through all of the books. It's always been something he's been obsessed with.
He's never even seen a dragon early on.
No, I feel like the first few times you meet him in the books, actually, he's reading books about dragons. He's doing dragon research. Like, dragons are his specialty. And so, when this episode, I have mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, I felt like this episode was just like, oh, I'm Tyrion, I'm drunk. Of course I know how to deal with dragons. That makes sense. And then, but I feel like that undercuts the moment where his speech talking to the dragons about how, like, oh, I've, like, makes it like, it gives him the same love for dragons, but it makes it almost like a hidden secret type thing. Like, he's like, oh, like, I cried because I didn't get a dragon. Like, I always wanted a dragon growing up. Like, I felt like that was somewhat of a clever way to address his love for dragons and to make it fit into the show canon, since it's something they've ignored for so long. I don't think it quite justifies them ignoring it for as long as they did.
I honestly think it would have been better if they brought it up earlier in the overall series, but the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they like Dinklage does a great performance with showing his admiration as well as respect towards dragons,
Yep.
and the fact that in the background Varys is just like kind of like mouth agape in all of what's going on, as just like what, how is, all right, something's interesting going on here. He just released two dragons and they did not burn him to a crisp.
I mean, my bigger problem with this whole thing is it was a very, very dumb thing for Tyrion to do. And he even admitted it was a dumb thing, and the resolution of that whole scene was, well, that was a dumb thing to do. I don't know. I didn't. I thought that was actually one of the weaker scenes, weaker parts of this episode was
I think
Tyrion's stuff.
I would stand, I would disagree a little bit just because I think it does bring a little bit more light to Tyrion's character, and even though he's just like this was a dumb thing to do, I don't think that could have resolved in any other way than Tyrion being really out of character and saying, "Well, that was awesome."
Well, I mean, I don't. I think my problem is that it was a decision that didn't make sense, like given his character. And then they decided to cover up for that fact by having the character decide after doing it that he shouldn't have done it. And I don't like writing a small little vignette like that. Like it kind of it's an attempt to undo what they knew didn't make sense for Tyrion to do. So my question is, why not just find a different way to do it? Like
Hmm.
if you know people are going to have a problem with how Tyrion's acting, don't undercut it with Tyrion going, "Oh, well, that was dumb. Don't let me do that again." Like I thought that was very like, "Oh, if I ever have another really dumb idea like that, like punch me in the face." Like, come on. Like don't try to write something around the plot you've created like that. Write something better originally. um
Fair, I can see that.
but I don't know, cuz I do think it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously Tyrion's going to have something's going to go on with Tyrion and those dragons. But yeah, no, I thought the Tyrion stuff was kind of weak this episode.
All right. Um. Well, you know what? You know what's not weak? The storm, the
Hmm.
oncoming kraken, the 10 tentacled monstrosity that is the Greyjoy family. They
uh,
have a plot.
I love. I don't. I guess I've never noticed this before. His fireplace is awesome
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
with that giant fucking wooden kraken over it. Like it's fucking awesome.
Are you gonna get one of those?
It's on order.
All right, good. Yeah, probably Etsy, right?
I know a guy who knows it. It's actually that exact one is on its way from the
Oh,
set.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I
But
know
yeah,
a
he
guy
has
who knows
a.
a guy who knows a guy.
I kind of enjoy the Greyjoy scenes because it really quickly goes from, well, we're literally king of nothing. Everything that we had is now gone, and I'm disappointed. And her name's her name's not Asha in this, is it? Oh no, it is Asha
No,
in
it's
this.
Asha in this. They changed it from Yara.
Okay. Asha is just like, well, we're pretty shit at taking at land in places, and he's just like, well, just follow my orders. I'm your king, and then he walks away. Like, okay, that's weird. And then he proves that he is the most weak and feeble king ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I want to beg caution with Pike because I'm excited for Pike. The Pike plot lines were some of my favorite from books 4. And Pike actually might be my favorite uh, nation, or my favorite group might be the Pike peeps. But I'm worried, and here's why.
Because of
Because
Doran.
because of Dorne.
Yeah.
Dorne was also one of my favorite arcs, and they completely ruined it. Now, interestingly, some under the table dealings. This Pike stuff happened in the same book as Dorne. This is all stuff from book 4, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
So this is actually this stuff has been like Balon's been dead for a while. And Balon, incidentally, for those of you who are keeping score, was the last king that Melisandre named when she used King's Blood and killed, the little fat leeches things with Gendry. Balon was the last one. So now everyone that she named in that spell or whatever is dead. Oh, yes, because she didn't name Tommen because Tommen wasn't king yet. So everyone
Yeah,
she
it was Joffrey at
it
the
was
time.
Joffrey at the time. So everyone she named is dead. So file that away wherever you want in evidence that Melisandre can or can't do magic. Um, but yeah, so I'm very intrigued what's going to happen with Pike. I'm excited. I'm cautiously excited. I don't love Euron's casting, but we also didn't get to see a whole lot of him yet. Um,
I think we got all the introduction that we have to have until they have the King's Moot.
yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, it was somewhat of an awkward introduction to bring him in and to have him be the one responsible for killing Balon, which is unclear in the books. We really don't know who did it.
although it
Um,
is like
it's
supposed,
yeah, it's heavily
implied.
implied that it. Well, we don't think it was him personally. It's heavily implied that he hired someone to do that. Yeah.
Another thing to note that's different from the books and here is that Euron is not allowed to be on the Iron Islands. He was sentenced to sea for all time until Balon dies. It just so happens that Balon dies the same day that Euron shows up. I do like uh, the reason why I kind of liked his introduction, even though he doesn't say much and he doesn't do much other than kill a king, is that when the rope bridge is shaking like a motherfucker
Mm-hmm.
in the storm, that's something that, when a rope bridge shakes, it's kind of the same kind of momentum and movement of a rocking ship, and Balon sways, whereas Euron stands firm. And that you
Mm.
can tell that one of them has been at sea a lot longer than the other.
Yeah, that is a good note.
Yeah, he's in my opinion, Euron Greyjoy is probably the most threatening man in Westeros. Uh, when like when the Greyjoy plotline in the books comes along, I'm hoping it's the same for the show. And right now, I'm cautiously optimistic also because of Dorne. Like Dorne was such a botched attempt at a storyline that I'm like, if they did the same thing to the Greyjoys, I'm not exactly sure I could forgive that.
Well, and I mean the interesting thing is too is that as far as I know, um we're only getting him. I don't think we're getting Victorian. Um, and I don't. So the guy who did the funeral,
Yeah,
I'm not even sure if he's gonna end up being crap. I can't remember his name right now. Who's the other one?
I'm trying to remember right now.
God damn it. You caught us with our pants down, guys. But anyways, I'm not even sure if that's him officially or he's just kind of a stand-in character. But yeah, we're getting the fucking King's Moot or Queen's Moot, I should say. Um, which yeah, it's good news. Like I said, Pike is. It's funny when people ask me who my favorite house is. I'll normally say Pike, and people are like, "Why? Theon sucks." And well, Theon does suck, but Theon's such a small part of Pike, and the larger Pike plots in the books are much much more interesting. And yeah, I just hope they handle it better than Dorne. Actually, I hope they handle it a lot better than Dorne.
I mean, anything can be handled better than Dorne. Dorne was just bad.
Yeah, we'll have to. We'll have to see. But hopefully, but yes, I do. And actually, I will. I think I said this last week, so I might be repeating myself. But I do, and I'm fairly confident in the thought that um, they've replaced Dorne with Pike. And especially with with the fact that this plot and all this stuff happened in earlier books, and it seemed like the show wasn't going to do them. I'm I'm wondering, and it's entirely possible that this was always the plan. However, I kind of doubt it. Um, if they decided, well, Dorne's not working, let's cut Dorne and go back and do everything we can.
Were you
With
talking about Damp Hair, the
what?
Aeron Greyjoy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But to go, if they're like, okay, Dorne's not working, let's get rid of Dorne. What can we throw in Dorne's place? Okay, we haven't done a lot of Pike. We can pull the Pike stuff out. Because it was odd to not have Pike in last season. This could have been the plan all along to save Pike for this season. I don't know. Um, but yeah, keep an eye on Pike. Keep an eye on the pirates. That's all I'll say.
In my opinion, for Pike in the books, I believe Pike becomes a actual major role kingdom, rival kingdom at some like a point, and I think that they're trying to bring that in now because apart from the High Sparrow, the White Walkers, and the North, and I guess also Marine, there's there's not as much tension being caused like the War of Five Kings,
Mm-hmm.
but Pike brings in a significant amount of tension.
It does.
Especially since Dorne right now, I'm assuming, is some sort of anarchy where nothing's going right.
Mm.
I wonder if they're ever going to address Dorne further, or they're just going to write it off as that was a plot that we abandoned.
I honestly think we've seen the last of Dorne. It may show up. We may have a few small scenes here and there. Or maybe it'll show up in the ending in a montage of here's what happened. But
Oh god, that's incredibly 80s to do.
well, I mean, or just think about the ending of the newer Star Wars trilogy where they kind of cut through and show all the planets. Like something like that. Like I could see Dorne showing up there, and maybe Dorne will show up again in the larger picture. But I wouldn't get your hopes up. I'm thinking they realized Dorne wasn't working, cut their losses, and they're moving on. Um, I mean, it would be weird. It would be weird for them to bring back, you know, those characters just to film, the couple minutes that they filmed. But I don't know. That's kind of what my thought is. I think Dorne might be done.
Okay. Well, I brought up the High Sparrow, so should we move on to King's Landing, where things are still bleak?
Yeah, let's go. Let's take King's Landing. King's Landing for 200, Alex.
What is I mean, I guess I should ask a question or give an answer. I already messed up the Jeopardy joke.
It's gone.
Yeah, because the moment's done.
No, yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
But anyways, High Sparrow. We have the High Sparrow. We have some action from the people of King's Landing, and we have definitely not the Mountain crushing people's heads and being intimidating.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that mountain stuff. That mountain stuff was sick. Holy
yeah, the two scenes that I really enjoyed for brutal violence was when the wildlings took Castle Black and the giant bashed that one brother of the Night's Watch.
Yeah, that was.
And
too.
then the Golden Knight, whose name I forget what his real designation is, but definitely not the Mountain. Smashes the head of that one guy who was boasting.
Robert Strong.
Robert Strong, thank you.
Yep.
When Robert Strong beats the shit out of one guy by squishing his head like a grape against a wall.
Yeah, we had some violence.
Some major violence. Now that I think about it.
Some major violence, though. No, I don't think we had. I don't think we had any nudity.
No, we didn't. That's actually very true.
Lots of violence, no nudity.
I mean, we got our max amount of nudity last week.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, King's Landing to me is actually. I mean, yeah, I've talked to people, and King's Landing. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with King's Landing. I don't know what's going to happen with King's Landing. Um, it's been done quite a lot differently than the books, but normally, normally when something's done differently than the books, you can still kind of get some sense of what they're trying to do with it, or if they change one thing, you go, okay, this makes sense for how they changed it, so this is probably what they're going to change along the way. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen with Cersei. Marjorie is a giant question mark in my head because she's essentially been rotting in jail. It was most of last season, wasn't it?
Most of last season, and she's still there.
And she's still there. So, we haven't seen a lot out of her. Um,
What are the odds that her brother is dead?
I don't think he's dead yet.
I think he's dead.
Where is he in the show even?
Last season he was taken away for being homosexual, and I'm almost we
Oh,
haven't
that's
seen
right.
him since, and I'm positive that Marjorie is her plot line is going to be her trying to repent so that she can see her brother, and she will not see her brother. She will see her brother's dead body.
Hmm.
Because
I
if I
mean,
know anything about religious fanatics, it's that they don't like homosexuals.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know with Marjorie because you can't do Cersei's plot with Marjorie. You can't have her do you can't have another naked walk. Like, so what do you do with Marjorie?
I think
And
she's going to become a zealot. I think she's going to become the. I'm trying to think of the historical figure that she kind of best exemplifies. Whereas Cersei's like the old realm, the old way things are like irreverency to the gods. I think Marjorie's going to be our first Catholic. I mean, yeah, whatever. Like it's like a Catholic
oh,
queen.
interesting. That's a good thought. That's a good thought. Hold on. I'm chewing on that. I'm absorbing it. Um, that's a good thought. I think I like that idea actually. I could kind of see that happening. And then we'd actually have a religious figure not on the throne but controlling the throne. I mean, Tommen. I'm trying to think how that fits in with Tommen.
Tom is still weak.
Yeah.
He loves Marjorie uncontrollably and will do anything that she says. And I think High Sparrow knows that, and that's why High Sparrow is more than willing to keep Marjorie and try to win her over to their side, make her repent. Because you know, if anything from this episode, first of all, there was a lot of Bernie Sanders references to High Sparrow this episode
Yes, there
from
were.
Reddit and Twitter. But also, High Sparrow has definitely shown that he is capable of holding power with the 99% of King's Landing. All he needs now is somebody to rule at the top. He's basically the pope for every Catholic, like priest, not priest, king or queen in the early medieval age into the Renaissance age.
See, my that I think that is an acceptable reading of his character. My problem is I can't figure out what they're doing with him either because I think that's the most likely reading of his character, but they're trying so hard to convince you that that's not the way to read him. They're trying so hard to convince you that he's not faking, that he's actually this penitent man, that he doesn't want power, that he's not power hungry. And they're like shoving that down your throats, which makes me, yeah, which I don't know. It makes me curious. It makes me very curious. Like, well, if you're shoving this down our throats, why? Are you doing it to throw us off the trail of what really happens? Do you know that we're going to be suspicious that you're shoving this down our throats and then that's actually, is it a double fake out? Like what's going on with him? I'm
I
very
think I think Thrones fans are naturally suspicious now of all characters
I think that's
because
very true.
like I think the greatest irony and the greatest twist of all is if he was actually a penitent man, who is looking out for the better holy
Exactly.
interests.
And that's my thought. Like, are they playing this up so hard for them to then go, no, like we weren't tricking you. This is actually this person's character. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm suspicious, and I'm suspicious on both sides. But yeah, King's Landing, incidentally, was one of the only Well, okay, those random knights and stuff died, but no one important died in King's Landing yet.
Speaking of knights in King's Landing, the one Lannister knight who was had to tell Robert Strong and Cersei, "You can't go to Marcella's funeral." I'm just like, I do not want that guy's job.
Oh no, but I don't know. That was like, I thought that was kind of weird too, because I don't know. I can't, because like Tommen's just.
I don't know what the fuck Tommen's doing.
Well, but the problem is that Tommen doesn't know what the fuck Tommen's doing.
I mean, that's been his character. His character doesn't know what the fuck he's doing at all times.
Yeah, but but the 1 minute you block your mother from going, and then your father slash uncle tells you that was a bad idea, so then you change your mind. Like, I don't like.
Well, he's an impressionable young man who never was bred to rule. It was all supposed to be
Yeah, it was always
Joffrey.
supposed to be Joffrey.
And so he's just like, I'm trying to learn this as I go. And like, yeah, but you're learning at this like the worst possible time.
Yeah,
And you let a religious revolution show up.
well, I mean, and that's the thing. So now what does he do? Like like King's Landing is a time bomb, and something has to happen. And given everything else that's happening around the globe, so to speak, it's time for something to happen in King's Landing. I guess Marcella died, but she died on the way. She doesn't count. And, I mean, we've seen Marcella for like 5 minutes this entire fucking series. But maybe Tommen's the next to die.
I would think that Tommen is a better pawn for the Sparrow movement.
I would agree with it, but someone's got. I'm thinking someone's gonna die soon in King's Landing.
I don't know. There's not. You have a point. Somebody is going to have to die.
Like something has to happen. You know, something has to happen.
It can't be Cersei. She has to wait for all her kids to die first.
So and it won't be Jaime.
Yeah.
So it's got to be Tommen.
Yeah. I also am convinced that Jaime's going to be the one who kills Cersei, but.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff floating around with things like that.
I believe it because of Shakespearean versions of prophecy, and I believe that Martin would have pulled something out of his hat for that, where, the prophecy says, it will be killed by somebody who has blonde hair like yours. And she's like, oh my god, it's going to be my brother Tyrion. He's such a little monster. And like, yeah, but you have another brother who has blonde hair.
No, I think, the prophecy was I think the prophecy originally said younger brother.
Did it say younger? Specifically younger?
I thought, because it was Valyria, wasn't it? I don't know how I got it. I'd have to go back and look at it. So I don't know. But, the other question is if we'll get the Clegane Bowl or not.
Oh, yeah.
Because that I don't. Because I don't. How did that go down differently? Is it Marjorie? Is decided to do trial by combat for her honor? Is that what the Clegane Bowl is? I think that's right.
I think so.
I think that's right. But yeah, something's got to happen in King's Landing. Like, you had Cersei in a cell almost all of last season. Same with Marjorie. Now Marjorie's still there. Like, something has got to happen. I mean, the obvious guess for my mind is we haven't seen a lot of Highgarden yet, and Highgarden cannot have taken lightly Marjorie being thrown in a cell. We also know that we're going to see a lot of Sam's family, and they are also pretty big retainers of the Tyrells, so could come in through that way too. But I don't know. I'm curious who I'm. Let me back up. I'm very curious at the end of the season who will be sitting on the throne. I do not think it'll be Tommen.
I'm my gut reaction is that we're also going to be having a siege of Winterfell by the end of the season.
Yeah, let's talk about Winterfell for a second. Let's talk about
So,
Winterfell. What's
anyone
going?
miss Joffrey?
Eh.
He seems like such a nice kid now. Like maybe misunderstood, a little bit misguided, but god damn, Boltons.
This is one of those things that I think is going to be there's a lot of things this episode that I think are going to be done much differently in the books. And this is one of them. I don't see Ramsay killing his father in the books. It's possible, but I don't see that as happening.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I would also think like I'm still convinced Roose Bolton is a like a stone cold motherfucker, but here's like I also think that if he does kill his father and also mom and also brother newborn, that will be much more graphic in the books than it will be in the television show because they didn't even show the baby being mauled by wolves or hounds.
Mm.
But I think the funniest reaction for me was if you are on subreddit, like on the Reddits, and you are subscribed to r/Dreadfort, the Dreadfort had many mixed emotions last night. My favorite was, okay, I know that I support the Dreadfort and House Bolton, and that makes me a terrible person. But do we really want Ramsay Bolton to be our new lord? Just like, come on.
Yeah, and I mean the North is another area that's kind of a mess right now because yeah, like Ramsay can't rule the North. He could
Oh, Ramses is screwed
yeah,
for a couple reasons.
he can't rule the North. He
See,
can't hold Winterfell.
the difference between Ramsay Bolton, and Roose Bolton is that Roose was Tywin of the North and had a way to, even though like people didn't like him and they knew him as one of the instigators of the Red Wedding, and therefore then there's a lot of Stark sympathizers in the North. He knew how to hold power and show that he was in control.
Mm-hmm.
Now that Ramsay has announced to the North that he was killed by his enemies, like that means all the Stark lawyers like, wait, the Bolton's enemies are coming to attack him. Like, all right then. So let's gather arms. And the only allies that I'm aware of that the Boltons truly have in their pocket, like true allies of the Boltons, are the Karstarks and the White Hills. Those are the only two that I can think of right now. Maybe a couple other smaller houses, but since John Jesus Snow rose from the dead, has a wildling army, the largest army in Westeros, and I believe like that's even after what happened at Hearthome. Hearthome. He's fucked. I think we have this season might be the last days of Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, Ramsay's not smart. That's his problem. He's ruthless.
He's impulsive.
But he has none of the
Guile.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, he has. I was gonna say savvy, but guile too. He has none of the political timing that his father had. His father was a master manipulator, and Ramsay. I mean, everything Roose says about Ramsay is true. If you act like a mad dog, you'll be slaughtered, and that was probably prophecy to him being slaughtered. So yeah, Ramsay. I don't know. I mean, the show has proven at this point that it needs a central villain. Ramsay might make it through this season until the White Walkers kind of come to the forefront. I don't know.
I'm gonna say that Ramsay will end this season, and Euron Greyjoy will take the mantle of villain up until the White Walkers.
I'd be okay with that.
I'd be okay with that too.
I'd be super duper. Actually, I'd be glad for that to happen.
Yeah, I think Ramsay has definitely met his end. I usually for Game of Thrones, I usually run by a particular rule when it comes to the old gods, like well, rather the new gods. With the old gods, I kind of get the sense like there's mysticism. With the fire god, you have to be a disbeliever in order for anything to actually work. And with the new gods, if you disobey a rule, they come and bite you in the ass. And for Ramsay, he just committed the act of kinslaying. Like, it's okay for him to torture Theon. That's perfectly fine. It's okay for him to torture other people of other families. But as soon as he killed his father, his mother, and his brother, that is the moment that, he has just written his death sentence. Like, all right, you're going to get...
I mean, the Freys have still gone unpunished for the Red Wedding.
Oh, it's going to happen.
They broke. They broke.
I like to think of it as a long cast time. It will occur.
Yeah. I don't know. The religion stuff is interesting because a lot of the religious stuff is toned down in the show, and a lot of the mysticism too.
And it still kind of has enough, like, even if you're a book reader and you watch the show, you can still kind of see that the things that are connected to rules of the religious universe of Game of Thrones are still there. Mm-hmm. It's just that they never mention them, so you never know what the rules are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll see. I think I'm a big proponent of the two god theory. That there's only two gods. It's fire and ice. That's my favorite of the religious theories.
I think there is only one active god in Westeros, and that is the fire god. And the other gods may be present, but they don't perform active miracles.
Interesting.
I also don't know, like, I'd like to have an explanation of, like, after the series is done, of how the pantheons kind of work in like, if it is like fire god, ice god, and like the seven and these other guys, how does that pantheon interact with each other? Like, why does R'hllor have like this active cognizant power in reality where the other ones are like, let's make it ironic?
I mean, I do think we'll figure some of that stuff out, but like I said, my biggest thought is I've always been a proponent of two, of it. One gets too powerful and then the other one starts to overcompensate, and vice versa. But we'll see.
That's a very, very Zoroastrian religious belief right there.
Well, it's a very black and white one too.
That's Zoroastrianism, actually.
Yeah. But we'll see. So I'm trying to think if there's anyone we haven't covered yet.
We had the Wildlings in the north. We had the Greyjoys. We went to Tyrion. Jaime and the High Sparrow had a little chit chat.
Oh, Arya.
Oh yeah, she got her shit kicked in again.
Yeah, I'm very much over Arya's arc at this point.
I just kind of footnote it, just like, oh yeah, that happened. Until she does something, like, until she becomes Matt Murdock, I'm not going to be interested.
Yeah, it's not interesting. She's just getting the shit beat out of her. I mean, that's all that happened all of last season. At least it looks like there's finally some momentum there.
Yeah, a girl's no longer a beggar.
Yeah. Hopefully. But yeah, I'm over Arya's story. Sansa, we got a little bit of her and Brienne. Oh, Theon left, but I don't give a fuck. I almost think that scene was only there to set up the scene of Pike.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm actually 150% sure it was just like, we haven't been to Pike in a while. How can we best set it up? Let's make Theon go home. Why would Theon go home? He's going to get fucking killed when he gets there. Yeah.
Exactly.
But we need a transition piece. All right.
Exactly. But I do want to say, I think this was, for the most part, these have been two very strong episodes. They have been coming out guns a-blazing with the stuff, and I'm curious, like, if they can keep this momentum up. Like, people are falling like flies, like, Jon coming back, not that big of a surprise, but a lot of this, like, there's been a lot of surprises and things happening.
So I'm going to ask you a question regarding Jon.
Okay.
So, one's a funny question, one's a regular question. The funny question is, if you were to rise from the dead, like, you've been dead for, like, like maybe a day, and you rose from the dead, you have holes in you, and you're completely naked on a table, would you feel awkward?
Yeah.
Like, like, do you like? How would you find your clothes? It's just like, why the fuck?
Well, I mean, the question is, does he remember anything?
I have a feeling he probably will.
I mean, but or I mean, not like does he remember dying, but does he know he's been dead for 2 days?
Oh, that part probably not. He'd probably question why he has holes and why he's a little bit cold.
But yeah, so like, does he wake up and go, oh shit,
Yeah,
I've been dead for a couple days. Like, yeah, I've been dead for a season break. I don't know.
and my second question is with Jon Snow. Um, so he's out of his contract with the Night's Watch now because the Night's Watch contract is until you die, and he died,
Mm-hmm.
so he's no
Mm-hmm.
longer a brother. Uh, how do you think he's going to handle his betrayers? Do you think it's going to be John Mercy or John Not Mercy?
That's a good question, actually. And I do think, and you actually brought up a very good point that I had forgotten about for a while, and is I think John's death exists to get John out of his oath. I don't want to say that's the entirety of why it exists, but I think that's a very big part of it. Is that now John, because it was not in John's character to take over Winterfell. When it was handed to him by Stannis. But yeah, John's done what he had to do. He did his shit. So now he's free to take Winterfell. Now this is where it gets complicated because if he's a Targaryen, can he will he still take Winterfell? He's still got some Stark in him. Just not Ned. So then it gets complicated. Could we see Sansa and Jon vying for the throne?
It's gonna be a very interesting battle between Dany's claim to the throne, John's claim to the throne, and anyone else who comes up and like my claim to the throne, and also the White Walkers' claim to the kingdom. Not so much the throne. I I'm so a friend of mine has a theory that John will show mercy like John would, and then he would name the new Lord Commander would be best friend of Jon Snow who went to get the wildlings, and then that guy would pick not mercy.
Hmm, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. The one thing I do want to point out is there's a really good article going around talking about death in the Thrones universe, and that every character that's died and comes back a little different. They're never not changed by the experience. That's something that's very central to Martin. Um, so it's going to be very interesting to see how John is and how he comes back and how he's changed and if this is the same John that died or not. And I
That would be
think
funny if we're not so excited to see Jon Snow come back from the dead.
yeah, I
And
mean that's a very distinct possibility. Like a lot, people were rooting for him to die, but be careful what you or for him to die, for him to come back, but be careful what you wish for, especially with Martin.
there was a fiction work, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I can't for the life of me. Where the character died, and when they rose back from the dead, uh, the character's friends were super excited, like, "Oh, you're back! Like, I can't believe it! It's a miracle!" But she was actually possessed by the god that brought her back, and was just a vengeance zealot.
Well, I mean that's what this article that I mentioned before was talking about is that with Stoneheart and Dondarrion, they both come back and they're obsessed with one thing. They're obsessed with revenge and they're not exactly the same as they were before they died. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to John in within that. If he is indeed the same Jon Snow that people loved. Um,
I bet we'll find out relatively soon.
I do. I think you're asking the right question, Tim. I think the question of how he deals with his betrayers, I think that will tell us right away. Oh, this is the same John. Oh, this is not the same John. I think that's very true.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride
Yep.
to the Iron Throne.
Yeah. But we're getting the end is in sight though.
I can't believe we're almost at the end.
The end is definitely in sight. Okay, so we're getting near our time here. Is there any other thoughts on this episode, Tim?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff, and it was a really strong episode, and I'm curious to see how the show can keep this momentum up. Um,
I think we'll slow down partway in the mid-season where they're going to try to pick it up for episode 9 and
I mean,
9.
the show always does that. The middle of the seasons always tend to have a couple duds, which is why I think they want to trim down, do a short order for the final two seasons. So we'll see. But okay, well, thank you everyone for listening. 8-Bit Awesome, Voices of Valyria podcast. Find us on Facebook. We're on YouTube. Like us, follow us, tweet at us, send us postcards, send us drawings.
Stay beautiful, people.
Yeah, you know what to do. But thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. Peace.
Yeah. Same time, same place.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Bye, guys.